The Galactic Rift. The twin moons of Zephyria cast an ethereal glow over the crystalline spires of the capital city, Lumina. Nera stood atop the highest tower, her iridescent scales shimmering in the moonlight as she gazed at the stars above. Her 4 arms were crossed, tentacles coiled tightly around her torso, a sign of the anxiety that gripped her. For centuries, the Zephyrians had lived in peace, their advanced civilization flourishing in harmony with the natural world around them. They were a species of thinkers, artists, and explorers, their telepathic abilities allowing them to communicate across vast distances and even glimpse possible futures. But tonight, Nera's visions were clouded with darkness and uncertainty. "Elder Zora," she called out, her mental voice resonating through the empty chamber behind her. The shadows grow deeper. Something is coming. The wizened Zephyrian emerged from the shadows, her once vibrant scales now a muted silver. "I feel it too, young one. The cosmic threads are tangled, obscuring our sight." Nera turned to face her mentor, frustration evident in her glowing eyes. "But why? We've never encountered such interference before. It's as if something is deliberately blocking our foresight." Zora nodded gravely. "Indeed, and that in itself is cause for great concern. Whatever approaches possesses power beyond our understanding." As if in response to their words, the night sky suddenly blazed with light. Nara and Zora shielded their eyes as a massive object tore through Zephyria's atmosphere, trailing fire and smoke. It crashed into the mountains beyond the city with an earth-shattering impact that sent tremors through the crystalline towers. Alarms blared throughout Lumina as the Zephyrians awoke to the chaos. Nera's tentacles uncoiled, her body tensing for action. "Elder, what should we do?" But before Zora could respond, the sky lit up once more, not with falling debris, but with the ominous glow of approaching ships. They were unlike anything the Zephyrians had ever seen. Massive, dark vessels that seemed to absorb the very light around them. "Invaders," Zora whispered, her voice filled with dread. "Nara, you must warn the High Council. I will attempt to establish contact with these beings." Nara hesitated, torn between her duty and her concern for her mentor. "But Elder—" "Go," Zora commanded, her mental voice carrying the full weight of her authority. "Every moment counts. Our people need to be prepared." With a reluctant nod, Nera leaped from the tower, her body shifting and elongating into a serpentine form that allowed her to glide through the air. As she soared towards the council chambers, she could hear the panicked thoughts of her fellow Zephyrians, their collective fear a cacophony in her mind. The High Council was already assembled when Nara arrived, their usual calm demeanor replaced by tense deliberation. First Speaker Lysander turned to her as she entered. "Nara, what news from the watchtower?" Nara quickly relayed what she and Zora had witnessed, her words causing a ripple of alarm through the gathered leaders. "The ships are unlike anything in our records," she concluded, "and their approach was hidden from our foresight. We are facing an unknown threat." Lysander's expression grew grim. "Then we must assume the worst. Activate our planetary defenses and send out a call to all our allies in neighboring systems. We will not fall easily." As the council members rushed to carry out their assigned tasks, a deafening roar filled the air. The invaders had begun their assault on Lumina. Nera raced back outside, her heart pounding as she took in the scene of destruction. The dark ships rained down beams of sickly green energy, melting through the crystalline structures of the city as if they were made of ice. Zephyrian defenders took to the skies, their own vessels equipped with powerful energy weapons, but they seemed pitifully small against the massive invading force. In the midst of the chaos, Nera spotted a familiar figure standing atop a crumbling tower. "Elder Zora," she cried out, swooping down to her mentor's side. "We must get you to safety." But Zora stood transfixed, her eyes wide with a mixture of fear and fascination. "They are empty," she murmured. "I can sense no thoughts, no emotions. It's as if they're not even alive." A nearby explosion rocked the tower, sending debris raining down around them. Nara grabbed Zora with her lower arms, prepared to carry her to safety, when a blinding flash of light erupted in the sky above. For a moment, Nara thought it was another attack, but as the light faded, she saw a new ship descending through the atmosphere. It was sleek and silver, its design a stark contrast to both Zephyrian and invader vessels. As it drew closer, Nara's eyes widened in recognition. "Humans," she hissed, her voice filled with a mixture of surprise and contempt. The human ship wove through the battle with incredible agility, its weapons blazing as it tore through the invaders' formations. Nara watched in disbelief as the much smaller vessel managed to disable two of the massive dark ships, sending them crashing to the ground outside the city. "Impossible," Zora breathed. "How can they stand against such power?" Nara's response was cut short as a stray energy beam struck their tower, sending it toppling towards the ground. She clutched Zora tightly, using all her strength to slow their fall. But they were still hurtling towards certain death. Suddenly, a tractor beam enveloped them, halting their descent. Nara looked up to see the human ship hovering above, its boarding ramp extended. A voice crackled over an external speaker, the words in a language Nara had never wanted to learn but recognized all the same. "If you want to live, come with us now." Nara hesitated, centuries of distrust warring with the instinct for survival. But as another explosion rocked the city and Zora's frail form trembled in her arms, she made her choice. With a powerful leap, Nara carried herself and Zora onto the ramp of the human ship. As soon as they were aboard, the vessel shot upwards, weaving through the battle above. The ramp sealed behind them, and Nara found herself face to face with the human pilot, a female with short, dark hair and determined eyes. "I'm Captain Aria Chen of the Earth Alliance," she said briskly. "Welcome aboard the Starfire. Now strap in, because this is going to be one hell of a ride." As Nara secured herself and Zora into the seats provided, her mind raced with questions and conflicting emotions. She had always been taught that humans were a primitive, violent species, not to be trusted. Yet here they were, risking their lives to save Zephyrians from an even greater threat. The ship shuddered as it took a glancing hit from one of the invaders' weapons. Captain Chen's hands flew over the controls, her face a mask of intense concentration as she piloted them through the chaos. "Why are you here?" Nara demanded, unable to contain her suspicion any longer. "What do you want from us?" Chen spared her a quick glance. "Right now, to get us all out of here alive. We picked up your distress signal and came to help. The rest can wait until we're not in immediate danger of being blown to bits." As if to emphasize her point, a massive explosion lit up the view screen. One of Lumina's defense towers had been destroyed, leaving a gaping hole in the city's protective shield. "No," Nara cried out, her heart's aching for her people below. "We have to go back. We have to help them." Chen shook her head grimly. "We can't fight that entire armada on our own. The best thing we can do now is escape and find help. Your people need you alive, not dead in a hopeless last stand." Zora placed a comforting hand on Nara's arm. "She's right, young one. We must survive to fight another day." Tears streamed down Nara's face as she watched her beautiful world grow smaller through the view screen. The invaders' ships now formed a tight blockade around the planet, but Chen's skillful piloting allowed them to slip through a gap in their defenses. As they accelerated away from Zephyria, leaving the battle behind, Nara felt a piece of her soul being torn away. Everything she had ever known, everyone she had ever loved, was now at the mercy of those monstrous invaders. And her only hope for saving them lay in the hands of a species she had been raised to despise. "Where are we going?" she asked quietly, her voice hoarse with emotion. Captain Chen's expression softened slightly as she engaged the faster-than-light drive. "To Earth. We need to warn the Alliance about this new threat. And maybe, just maybe, we can find a way to save your world in the process." As the stars blurred into streaks of light around them, Nara closed her eyes and sent out a silent prayer to the cosmic forces she had always believed in. For the first time in her life, she found herself hoping that the humans would prove her lifelong prejudices wrong. Because now, they were all that stood between her people and annihilation. Part 2. Reluctant Alliance. The journey to Earth was tense and silent. Nara spent most of her time tending to Elder Zora, whose frail form had been badly shaken by their narrow escape. Captain Chen focused on piloting the Starfire, occasionally conferring in hushed tones with her small crew. A tactical officer named Marcus and a science specialist called Dr. Emilia Sato. As they approached the Sol system, Nara felt a mixture of curiosity and apprehension. She had heard stories of Earth, of course, tales of a polluted, overpopulated world whose inhabitants had nearly destroyed themselves countless times. But as they dropped out of FTL and the blue-green planet came into view, she couldn't help but feel a twinge of awe. "It's beautiful," she murmured, almost against her will. Captain Chen smiled slightly. "Wait until you see it up close. There's a reason we fought so hard to preserve it." As they began their descent into Earth's atmosphere, alarms suddenly blared throughout the ship. Marcus's hands flew over his console. "Captain, we've got incoming. Earth Defense Force ships on an intercept course." Chen cursed under her breath. "Damn it, they must think we're hostile." "Emilia, send out the recognition codes." "Marcus, prepare evasive maneuvers, but do not, I repeat, do not return fire." Nara tensed, her tentacles coiling tightly around her body. "I thought you said we'd be safe here." "We will be," Chen assured her, though her grip on the controls belied her calm tone. "Just a little misunderstanding. It'll be sorted out in no time." The next few minutes were a blur of motion as Chen skillfully evaded the EDF ship's attempts to disable them. Nara watched in grudging admiration as the human captain anticipated each move, always staying one step ahead. Finally, a voice crackled over the comms. "Starfire, this is EDF Command. Your codes check out. Stand down and prepare for escort to Tranquility Base." The tension in the cockpit eased palpably. Chen let out a long breath, acknowledged command. "It's good to be home." As they followed their escort towards the lunar surface, Nara pressed her face against the view screen, taking in the stark beauty of Earth's satellite. The sprawling complex of Tranquility Base came into view, a marvel of engineering that put even Lumina's most advanced structures to shame. Once they had landed and gone through a rigorous decontamination process, Nara and Zora found themselves in a stark conference room, facing a panel of stern-faced human officials. Admiral Helena Reyes, a tall woman with steel-gray hair and piercing eyes, led the questioning. "Let me get this straight," Reyes said, her voice tinged with disbelief. "You're saying that an unknown alien force, possessing technology far beyond our own, has invaded your homeworld, and that these invaders somehow managed to block your species' natural telepathic and precognitive abilities?" Nara nodded, trying to keep her frustration in check. "Yes, that's exactly what I'm saying. And while we sit here talking, my people are being slaughtered." Reyes exchanged glances with her colleagues. "You have to understand our position. The Zephyrian amalgam has been isolationist for centuries, rebuffing all our attempts at diplomatic relations. And now, suddenly, you show up asking for our help." "We didn't ask for anything," Nara snapped, her temper flaring. "Your Captain Chen intervened of her own accord. If it were up to me." "If it were up to you, you'd be dead," Chen interjected coolly. "Admiral, I know this is unprecedented, but I saw the threat with my own eyes. Whatever these invaders are, they're like nothing we've ever encountered. And if they can take down a civilization as advanced as the Zephyrians, what chance do we stand if they turn their attention to Earth?" A murmur ran through the assembled officials. Reyes leaned back in her chair, her expression thoughtful. "You make a valid point, Captain, but we can't just commit to a war based on the word of 2 refugees and your crew." "Then send a reconnaissance mission," Chen pressed. "Let us go back with a small fleet, assess the situation, If I'm wrong, you've lost nothing but a little time and fuel. But if I'm right, the room fell silent as the implications sank in. Finally, Reyes nodded. Very well. I'll take your proposal to the Security Council. In the meantime, our guests will be given quarters here on the base. They are not to leave without an escort, is that clear? As they were led out of the conference room, Nera felt a mixture of relief and resentment. They were safe for now, but she couldn't shake the feeling that they were wasting precious time. Over the next few days, as they waited for the Security Council's decision, Nera found herself reluctantly impressed by the humans' efficiency and adaptability. The base was a hive of activity, with scientists and engineers working around the clock to analyze the data from the Starfire's encounter with the invaders. Dr. Seto sought out Nera's help in understanding Zephyrian biology and technology, her enthusiasm for knowledge overriding any initial awkwardness between them. Your neural structure is fascinating, she gushed as she pored over scan results. The way your synapses are linked to allow for telepathic communication, it's like nothing we've ever seen. Nera found herself warming to the human scientist, despite her best efforts. It's not just communication, she explained. Our minds can link together in vast networks, sharing knowledge and experiences across generations. It's how we've achieved such harmony in our society. Sato's eyes lit up. That's incredible. And you said these invaders somehow disrupted this ability. How do you think they managed that? Nera's tentacles writhed in agitation as she considered Dr. Sato's question. I'm not sure, she admitted reluctantly. It was as if a veil had been drawn over our minds. We could still communicate telepathically at short ranges, but our ability to see possible futures or connect with our planetary consciousness was completely blocked. Sato's brow furrowed in concentration. Fascinating. It sounds like some kind of psychic dampening field, but to create something that could affect an entire species on a planetary scale, the energy requirements would be enormous. Their conversation was interrupted by the arrival of Captain Chen, her expression grim. The Security Council has made their decision. We leave for Zephyria in 6 hours. Nera's heart leaped. They agreed to help. Chen's hesitation spoke volumes. Not exactly. They've authorized a small reconnaissance fleet. 3 ships, including the Starfire. We're to assess the situation and report back. Under no circumstances are we to engage the enemy directly. What? Nera exploded, her scales flashing with anger. My people are dying. We don't have time for your human bureaucracy. Hey, Chen snapped back, her patience wearing thin. We're risking our lives to help you. A little gratitude wouldn't kill you. The two glared at each other, the tension in the room palpable. It was Dr. Seto who finally broke the silence. Captain, Nera, please. Fighting amongst ourselves won't help anyone. We need to work together if we're going to have any chance of understanding this threat. Nera took a deep breath, forcing her tentacles to uncoil. You're right. I apologize, Captain. It's just, every moment we delay. Chen's expression softened slightly. I get it. I do. But rushing in unprepared won't save anyone. We need to be smart about this. As they made their final preparations for departure, Nera found herself struggling with conflicting emotions. On one hand, she was grateful for the humans' willingness to help. On the other, their caution frustrated her to no end. Zephyrians valued decisive action, trusting in their foresight to guide them. This methodical, step-by-step approach felt painfully slow. The small fleet departed Earth under cover of darkness, their mission classified at the highest levels. As they entered FTL, Nera stood at the view screen, watching the stars blur into streaks of light. Elder Zora joined her, moving slowly but with a renewed sense of purpose. You're troubled, young one, Zora observed, her mental voice gentle. Nera nodded. I fear we may be too late, and even if we're not, can we truly trust the humans? Their history is filled with violence and betrayal. Zora was quiet for a long moment. It is true that humans have a complicated past. But consider this. Despite all their internal conflicts, they have managed to unite and reach for the stars. They have faced extinction many times, yet they endure. There is strength in that, and perhaps wisdom too. But they're so limited, Nera protested. Without our abilities, how can they hope to stand against such a powerful enemy? A small smile played across Zora's aged features. Perhaps that very limitation is their greatest strength. Humans have learned to compensate for their lack of innate abilities with ingenuity and adaptability. Watch them closely, Nera. You may find they surprise you yet. As if on cue, alarms blared throughout the ship. Captain Chen's voice came over the intercom. All hands to battle stations. We got company. Nera and Zora rushed to the bridge, arriving just as the Starfire dropped out of FTL. The view screen showed a terrifying sight. One of the massive invader ships, its dark hull seeming to absorb the very light of the stars around it. How did they find us? Nera gasped. Marcus, the tactical officer, shook his head in disbelief. They didn't. We dropped out of FTL right on top of them. What are the odds? Chen's hands flew over the controls. Doesn't matter. Evasive maneuvers. Emilia, what can you tell me about that ship? Dr. Seto's eyes were glued to her instruments. It's incredible. The energy readings are off the charts. And there's something else, some kind of field emanating from it. It might be what's interfering with Zephyrian abilities. The invader ship turned ponderously, bringing its weapons to bear on the much smaller human vessels. Green energy lanced out, narrowly missing the Starfire as Chen expertly piloted them through a series of tight maneuvers. We can't beat that thing in a straight fight, Chen growled. Ideas, people. Nera watched in fascination as the human crew sprang into action. There was no telepathic coordination, no shared consciousness guiding their efforts. Instead, they called out to each other, each contributing ideas and information in a chaotic but strangely effective manner. The field, Dr. Sato suddenly exclaimed. It's not just a defensive measure. I think it's part of their propulsion system, if we could disrupt it somehow. Marcus picked up the thread immediately. We could turn their own technology against them. But how do we generate enough power to affect something that massive? Chen's eyes lit up. The other ships. If we coordinate our efforts, use our engines to create a resonance frequency. Nera listened in growing amazement as the humans rapidly formulated a plan that would have taken a Zephyrian think tank days to develop. It was messy, improvised, and incredibly risky, and yet she found herself believing it might actually work. Nara, Chen called out, snapping her out of her reverie. We need you. Your telepathic abilities might be the key to coordinating our attack precisely enough to pull this off. For a moment, Nera hesitated. To link her mind with humans, even superficially, went against everything she had been taught. But as she looked around at the determined faces of the crew, she made her decision. I'll do it, she said, stepping forward. Tell me what you need. As Nera established a tentative telepathic link with the crews of all three ships, she felt a sudden rush of emotion. Fear, determination, hope. The humans' minds were a whirlwind of sensation, so different from the calm, ordered thoughts of her own people. But there was a strength there too, a fierce resolve that took her breath away. The next few minutes were a blur of coordinated action. The three human ships danced around the massive invader vessel, their engines pulsing in a carefully calculated pattern. Nera's mind strained to maintain the link, guiding their efforts with a precision that would have been impossible through normal communication. Suddenly, the invader ship's hull began to ripple and distort. Cracks appeared in its seemingly impenetrable armor, energy arcing between them in brilliant flashes of light. It's working, Marcus shouted. Their field is collapsing. Chen's voice was tense with concentration. All ships, focus fire on the weak points. Let's finish this. The combined firepower of the human fleet lanced out, striking the invader ship at its most vulnerable points. For a moment, nothing seemed to happen. Then, with a silent flash of light that seemed to bend the very fabric of space around it, the massive vessel imploded. As the debris field slowly expanded around them, a cheer went up from the human crew. Nara found herself swept up in their jubilation, her earlier reservations forgotten in the face of their incredible victory. Captain Chen turned to her, a fierce grin on her face. "Still think we're limited?" Nara could only shake her head in wonder. I was wrong. About so many things. As the adrenaline of the moment faded, the reality of their situation sank in. They had won a battle, but the war was far from over. Zephyria was still under siege, and they had no way of knowing how many more invader ships might be out there. But for the first time since fleeing her homeworld, Nara felt a glimmer of hope. If humans could achieve this with just 3 ships, what might they accomplish with the full force of their alliance? As they set course for Zephyria, Nara made a silent vow. She would no longer allow her prejudices to blind her. She would learn from these humans, fight alongside them, and together, they would find a way to save her people. The journey home had only just begun. Uncovering the truth, the small fleet limped towards Zephyria, their ships battered but intact after the encounter with the invader vessel. As they approached the outer reaches of the system, an eerie silence greeted them. The usual chatter of interplanetary communications was conspicuously absent, replaced by an oppressive static that seemed to press in from all sides. Nara stood on the bridge of the Starfire, her tentacles twitching nervously as she stared at the view screen. The familiar stars of her home system scrolled past, but something felt off. It was as if the very fabric of space had been altered, twisted into something alien and wrong. "I don't like this," Captain Chen muttered, her hands dancing over the controls. "Amelia, what are our sensors telling us?" Dr. Sato frowned at her readouts. "It's strange, Captain. I'm detecting massive energy fluctuations throughout the system. It's like reality itself is unstable here." Nara's heart clenched with fear. "The invaders," she whispered. "They must be using some kind of technology to reshape space itself. But why? What could they possibly hope to gain?" As they drew closer to Zephyria, the true extent of the devastation became clear. The once beautiful world was now shrouded in a sickly green haze, its crystalline cities reduced to shattered ruins. Massive invader ships hovered in low orbit, their hulls pulsing with eldritch energy. "My God," Marcus breathed, his usual stoic demeanor cracking. "How many of them are there?" Chen's jaw tightened. "Too many for us to take on directly. We need to find a way to gather intel without being detected." Nara stepped forward, her earlier hesitation forgotten in the face of her world's plight. "I might be able to help with that. If I can get close enough, I may be able to establish a telepathic link with any survivors on the surface." Chen looked skeptical. "I thought your abilities were being blocked." "They are," Nara admitted. "But now that we're closer, I can feel something. It's faint, but it's there. If we can find a way to boost the signal." Dr. Sato's eyes lit up. "I think I might have an idea about that. If we can modify our communications array to amplify psionic energy." As the humans set to work on Dr. Sato's improvised psionic amplifier, Nara found herself once again marveling at their ability to adapt and innovate on the fly. It was so different from the careful, methodical approach of her own people, and yet, in this moment of crisis, it seemed exactly what was needed. Hours passed as they worked, the tension on the bridge mounting with each moment. Finally, Dr. Sato stepped back from her jury-rigged device, wiping sweat from her brow. "I think it's ready. But Nara, I have to warn you. We have no way of knowing what effect this will have on your mind. The risks are irrelevant." Nara cut her off, moving to position herself next to the amplifier. "My people are dying. If there's even a chance this could help, I have to try." Chen nodded grimly. "All right. Everyone stand by. Nara, whenever you're ready." Taking a deep breath, Nara placed her hands on the amplifier and closed her eyes. At first, there was nothing but the same oppressive silence that had greeted them upon entering the system. But then, slowly, she began to feel something. A faint whisper at the edge of her consciousness, growing stronger with each passing second. Suddenly, her mind exploded with sensation. Images, thoughts, and emotions flooded through her, threatening to overwhelm her completely. She gasped, her body convulsing as she struggled to make sense of the torrent of information. Nara. Chen's voice seemed to come from very far away. Nara, can you hear me? What do you see? With a monumental effort, Nara forced her thoughts into some semblance of order. I can see them. My people. They're alive, but changed. The invaders, they're not just conquering our world. They're rewriting it, reshaping reality itself to suit their needs. As the images continued to pour through her mind, Nara began to understand the true nature of the threat they faced. The invaders, the Void Shapers, as her people had come to call them, were not mere conquerors. They were reality engineers, bending the very laws of physics to their will. They're using our world as a staging ground. Nara gasped, her voice strained with the effort of translating the psychic information into words. A foothold in this dimension. From here, they planned to remake the entire galaxy in their image. The implications were staggering. If the Void Shapers succeeded, it wouldn't just mean the end of Zephyria or Earth. It would mean the end of reality as they knew it. As Nara's connection began to fade, one final image seared itself into her mind. A massive structure, hidden beneath the surface of Zephyria's largest moon. A nexus of impossible geometries and pulsing energy, it seemed to be the source of the reality warping field that encompassed the entire system. With a cry of pain, Nara collapsed, the psychic link severed. Chen caught her before she hit the ground, easing her gently into a nearby chair. Easy there. You did good, kid. Real good. As Nara's vision slowly cleared, she saw the grim determination on the faces of the human crew. They had heard everything, and they understood the magnitude of what they were facing. So, Marcus said, breaking the tense silence, how exactly does one go about fighting enemies that can rewrite the laws of physics? To everyone's surprise, it was Elder Zora who answered. The aged Zephyrian had been quiet throughout their journey, conserving her strength, but now her eyes blazed with a fierce intelligence. With knowledge, she said, her mental voice resonating through the bridge. And with a power that they cannot rewrite. The power of choice. All eyes turned to the Elder as she continued. The Void Shapers may be able to alter the physical laws of our reality, but they cannot change the fundamental nature of consciousness itself. Our ability to choose, to adapt, to find meaning in chaos, that is something beyond their reach. Dr. Sato nodded slowly, her scientific mind racing with possibilities. Of course, quantum mechanics tells us that observation affects reality. If we could find a way to harness that on a massive scale, we could fight back against their reality manipulation. Chen finished, a glimmer of hope in her eyes. But how? We're talking about affecting change on a cosmic scale. Nara straightened in her chair, her strength returning as a plan began to form in her mind. The Nexus, she said. The structure I saw on the moon. It's the key to their power in this system. If we could infiltrate it, maybe find a way to reverse its effects. It's a long shot, Marcus warned. Even if we could get past their defenses, we have no idea how their technology works. Chen's lips curved into a determined smile. Long shots are what humans do best. Nara, do you think you could guide us to this nexus? Nara nodded, her earlier doubts about humanity fading in the face of their unwavering resolve. I can try, but we'll need help. There are resistance cells among my people, fighting back against the Void Shapers in whatever way they can. If we could make contact with them, then that's our first move, Chen decided. We'll need to send a small team to the surface. Volunteer. Then that's our first move, Chen decided. We'll need to send a small team to the surface. Volunteers. Without hesitation, Nara stepped forward. I'll go. I know the terrain. and I have the best chance of establishing contact with the Resistance." Chen nodded, unsurprised. "I'll go too. Marcus, you're with us. Dr. Sato, I need you here with Elder Zora. See if you can find a way to shield us from the Void Shaper's reality manipulation." As the team prepared for their covert mission to the surface of Zephyria, Nera found herself working alongside the humans with a newfound sense of respect and camaraderie. The ease with which they adapted to the bizarre situation continued to amaze her. Dr. Sato approached Nera as she was checking her gear. "I've modified these communicators to amplify your psionic abilities," she explained, handing Nera a small, sleek device. "It should help you maintain contact with any survivors you find, even through the Void Shaper's interference." Nera took the device, marveling at the ingenuity behind it. "Thank you, Dr. Sato. I'm sorry for doubting your people earlier." Sato smiled warmly. "No apologies necessary. We're all in this together now." As they boarded the stealth shuttle, Chen turned to Nera with a serious expression. "Once we're on the ground, you're our guide. We'll follow your lead, but remember, our primary objective is to make contact with the Resistance and gather intel. No heroics, understood?" Nera nodded grimly. "Understood, Captain." The descent to Zephyr's surface was tense, with Marcus skillfully piloting the shuttle through gaps in the Void Shaper's patrol patterns. As they broke through the atmosphere, Nera's heart clenched at the sight of her once beautiful world. The crystalline spires of Lumina lay shattered, their shimmering surfaces dulled and lifeless. The lush forests that had surrounded the city were now twisted into impossible geometries, pulsing with sickly green energy. Even the very air seemed wrong, thick with an oily mist that distorted light in unsettling ways. They landed in a secluded ravine on the outskirts of the city, the shuttle's cloaking technology concealing them from prying eyes. As they disembarked, Nera took a moment to center herself, reaching out with her enhanced psionic senses. "This way," she said after a moment, pointing towards a series of caves in the nearby cliffs. "I can sense something, minds shielded against the Void Shaper's influence." As they made their way through the twisted landscape, Nera couldn't help but marvel at how quickly the humans adapted to the alien terrain. Chen moved with the grace of a seasoned warrior, while Marcus's eyes constantly scanned for threats, his hand never far from his weapon. Suddenly, Nera froze, her tentacles coiling tightly around her body. "Wait," she hissed. "Something's wrong. The air, it's changing." Before their eyes, the very fabric of reality seemed to ripple and distort. The ground beneath their feet became liquid, then solid again in the span of heartbeats. The sky above them fractured like broken glass, revealing glimpses of impossible vistas beyond. "Reality flux," Chen growled, her voice tight with tension. "Sato warned us about this. Everyone, concentrate on what you know to be real. Don't let the illusions take hold." Nera watched in amazement as the humans steeled themselves against the onslaught of unreality. Their minds, so different from her own, seemed to possess a unique resilience. Whereas Zephyria might have been overwhelmed by the conflicting sensory input, the humans simply adapted. As the flux passed, leaving them shaken but unharmed, Nera felt a newfound appreciation for her human companions. "How did you do that?" she asked, unable to keep the awe from her voice. Marcus shrugged, a wry smile on his face. "Humans have been telling each other stories about the impossible for millennia. I guess we've just gotten good at suspending disbelief." They pressed on, finally reaching the entrance to the caves. As they ventured deeper into the darkened tunnels, Nera's sense of other minds grew stronger. Suddenly, they found themselves surrounded by a group of armed Zephyrians, their faces gaunt and their eyes wild with a mixture of fear and determination. "Halt!" one of them called out, leveling a strange, organic-looking weapon at the group. "Identify yourselves." Nera stepped forward, her hands raised in a gesture of peace. "I am Nera, daughter of the clan of the Rising Moons. We come seeking the resistance against the Void Shapers. The leader of the group, a battle-scarred Zephyrian with piercing silver eyes, studied them intently. You bring humans with you, he said, his mental voice tinged with suspicion. How do we know this isn't some trick of the Shapers? Chen, sensing the tension, slowly removed her helmet. I'm Captain Area Chen of the Earth Alliance. We're here to help. Your world isn't the only one at stake. If the Void Shapers aren't stopped, they'll reshape the entire galaxy. The Resistance leader's eyes widened slightly at Chen's words. After a long moment, he lowered his weapon. I am Karn, leader of what's left of the Free Zephyrians. Come, we have much to discuss. As they followed Karn deeper into the cave system, Nera marveled at the ingenuity of her people. The Resistance had created a hidden sanctuary, using a combination of ancient Zephyrian technology and scavenged Void Shaper artifacts to shield themselves from detection. In a large cavern that served as their command center, Karn introduced them to the other Resistance leaders. As Nera and Chen explained the situation and their plan to infiltrate the lunar nexus, the Zephyrians listened with a mixture of hope and skepticism. It's a bold plan, Karn admitted, but even if we could reach the nexus, how can we hope to understand their technology, let alone subvert it? It was Marcus who spoke up, surprising everyone. We don't need to understand it fully, he said, his tactical mind racing. We just need to disrupt it. Back on Earth, we have a saying, the enemy of my enemy is my friend. What if we could turn the Void Shapers' reality manipulation against them? Dr. Seto's voice came through their communicators, excitement evident in her tone. Marcus is onto something. If we could create a feedback loop in their system, using the quantum principles of observation and choice that Elder Zora mentioned. As the humans and Zephyrians began to collaborate, bouncing ideas off each other with increasing enthusiasm, Nera felt a surge of hope. The Void Shapers might have the power to reshape reality, but they had never encountered anything quite like this unlikely alliance. For the first time since the invasion began, Nera allowed herself to believe that they might actually have a chance. The path ahead was fraught with danger and uncertainty, but as she looked around at the determined faces of humans and Zephyrians working together, she knew one thing for certain. Reality itself was about to become a battlefield, and they intended to win. The battle for survival. The caverns of the Zephyrian resistance buzzed with activity as humans and aliens worked side by side, preparing for what could be the most important mission in the history of both their species. The plan they had developed was audacious, bordering on insane, but it was the best hope they had of stopping the Void Shapers. Captain Chen stood at the center of the command cavern, her face illuminated by the holographic display of the Void Shapers' lunar nexus. All right, let's go over this one more time, she said, her voice carrying the weight of command. Our primary objective is to infiltrate the nexus and plant the quantum disruptors that Dr. Sato and the Zephyrian scientists have developed. Nera nodded, her tentacles coiled tightly with tension. Once the disruptors are in place, they should create a cascading effect that will destabilize the Void Shapers' reality manipulation field. But timing is crucial. If we don't synchronize our attack with the Resistance's ground assault, the Shapers will have time to adapt. Karn, the Resistance leader, stepped forward. My people are ready. We've distributed the psionic amplifiers to all our cells across the planet. When the signal comes, we'll launch a coordinated strike against every Void Shaper stronghold we've identified. Marcus, who had been poring over tactical data, looked up with a grim expression. It's going to be one hell of a fight. Even with the element of surprise, we're outnumbered and outgunned. A lot of good people aren't going to make it through this. A heavy silence fell over the group as the full weight of what they were about to attempt sank in. It was Elder Zora who finally broke the silence, her aged voice carrying a strength that belied her frail appearance. Throughout history, both human and Zephyrian, there have been moments when the fate of entire civilizations hung in the balance, she said, her eyes shining with fierce determination. In those moments, it is not the strength of our weapons or the advanced nature of our technology that determines the outcome. It is the strength of our will, the power of our choice to stand against the darkness, no matter the cost. Her words seemed to energize the entire cavern. Humans and Zephyrians alike stood a little straighter, their resolve hardening in the face of the monumental task ahead. Chen nodded, a small smile playing at the corners of her mouth. "Well said, Elder. All right, people, you know your roles. We leave for the lunar nexus in 1 hour. Get yourselves ready." As the group dispersed to make their final preparations, Nera found herself approached by Dr. Sato. The human scientist held out a small, intricate device. "This is for you," she said. "It's a prototype I've been working on. It should allow you to manipulate local quantum fields, giving you a measure of control over the Void Shaper's reality distortions. Use it wisely." Nera took the device, marveling at its complexity. "Thank you, Dr. Sato. I'm not sure what to say." Sato smiled warmly. "You don't have to say anything. Just come back alive, okay? I have about 1,000 questions I want to ask you about Zephyrian neurobiology when this is all over." The hour passed all too quickly, and soon Nera found herself aboard the stealth shuttle once again, this time accompanied by Chen, Marcus, and a small team of human and Zephyrian special forces. As they broke atmosphere and set course for the lunar nexus, an eerie silence fell over the cabin. Nera stared out the viewport, watching as her homeworld grew smaller behind them. The once beautiful orb was now shrouded in a sickly green haze, pulsing with the alien energies of the Void Shapers. She felt a surge of determination. No matter what happened, she would see her world freed from this plague. As they approached the moon, the true scale of the Void Shaper's nexus became apparent. It was a massive structure, defying conventional geometry, its surface rippling and shifting in ways that hurt the eye to look at directly. "By all the stars," Marcus breathed, his usual stoic demeanor cracking slightly. "How are we supposed to infiltrate that?" Chen's jaw tightened as she studied the sensor readings. "We stick to the plan. The Resistance's attack should draw away most of their forces. We'll use that distraction to slip in through one of the minor access points Nera identified." As if on cue, their comms crackled to life with Karn's voice. "Ground teams are in position. We're ready on your mark, Captain." Chen took a deep breath, her hand hovering over the launch control for their quantum disruptors. "May whatever gods are out there be with us. All teams, commence Operation Reality Check." The next few moments were a blur of action. The shuttle dove towards the lunar surface, weaving through a suddenly active defense grid as the Void Shapers responded to the coordinated attacks on Zephyria. Nera's heart pounded as she watched Marcus pilot the craft with inhuman precision, narrowly avoiding energy beams that warped the very space around them. They landed hard in a crater near one of the Nexus's smaller entrances, the shuttle's cloaking technology barely holding under the strain. As they disembarked, the alien nature of their surroundings became even more apparent. The very ground beneath their feet seemed to shift and pulse, as if alive. "Remember," Chen called out as they approached the entrance, "reality itself is unreliable here. Trust your training, trust each other, and whatever you do, don't let the illusions take hold." As they breached the outer defenses of the Nexus, Nera felt a wave of disorientation wash over her. The interior of the structure was a nightmare of impossible angles and shifting perspectives. Corridors stretched into infinity before suddenly truncating, rooms expanded and contracted like breathing lungs, and gravity itself seemed to be more of a suggestion than a law. The team pushed forward, relying on Nera's psionic senses and the humans' uncanny ability to adapt to the chaos around them. They encountered pockets of resistance, Void Shaper constructs that seemed to be made of living shadow and crackling energy. But the combination of human ingenuity and Zephyrian psionics proved to be a formidable match. As they fought their way deeper into the Nexus, Nera couldn't help but marvel at the humans' resilience, where she struggled to maintain her sense of self in the face of the reality distortions. Chen and her team seemed to take it almost in stride, their minds flexing and adapting with remarkable speed. Finally, they reached what appeared to be the central chamber of the Nexus. Here, the fabric of reality was at its most unstable, with entire sections of the room phasing in and out of existence. At the center floated a massive, pulsing orb of energy, the heart of the Void Shaper's reality manipulation field. "This is it," Chen said, her voice tight with tension. "Nara, you're up. Use Seto's device to stabilize the area long enough for us to plant the disruptors." Nara nodded, stepping forward with the quantum manipulation device Dr. Seto had given her. As she activated it, she felt a surge of power unlike anything she had experienced before. For a brief moment, she could sense the underlying quantum framework of reality itself. With a thought, she created a bubble of stable space around the team. The humans moved quickly, placing the disruptors at key points around the central orb. But just as the last one was being set, a bone-chilling shriek filled the air. A massive void shaper materialized in the chamber, its form a writhing mass of shadows and impossible geometries. It lashed out with tendrils of pure unreality, threatening to unravel the very existence of everything in the room. "Nara, hold the field," Chen shouted as she and Marcus opened fire on the creature. Their weapons, enhanced with Zephyrian technology, tore holes in the Void Shaper's form, but it regenerated almost instantly. Nara strained to maintain the bubble of stability, her mind pushed to its absolute limits. She could feel the Void Shaper's power pressing against her defenses, seeking any weakness it could exploit. In that moment of desperation, Nara did something she never thought possible. She opened her mind fully to her human allies. In an instant, Chen and the others were connected to her thoughts, their consciousnesses merging into a unified whole. The humans' adaptability and creativity flowed through Nara, enhancing her psionic abilities in ways she had never imagined. Together, they pushed back against the Void Shaper's assault, their combined will a beacon of defiance against the encroaching chaos. With a final titanic effort, Nara channeled the full power of their united minds through Dr. Seto's device. A pulse of pure quantum energy erupted from the team, catching the Void Shaper mid-attack. For a moment, the creature's form stabilized, becoming solid and vulnerable. "Now," Chen's voice rang out, both aloud and in their shared mind space. As one, the team fired everything they had at the Void Shaper. Their weapons, supercharged by the quantum pulse, tore through the creature's suddenly corporeal form. With a shriek that seemed to echo across dimensions, the Void Shaper collapsed in on itself, disappearing into a singularity of its own unmaking. The chamber fell silent, broken only by the chamber fell silent, broken only by the heavy breathing of the team. For a moment, they stood in stunned disbelief, the enormity of what they had just accomplished slowly sinking in. Did we just do that?" Marcus asked, his voice a mixture of awe and disbelief. Chen nodded, a grim smile on her face. "We did, but we're not done yet. Nara, how long until the disruptors are fully charged?" Nara, still reeling from the intensity of the psychic link, shook her head to clear it. 2 minutes, she said, checking the readout on Dr. Seto's device. "But Captain, the Void Shapers will have felt that. They'll be coming." As if in response to her words, an otherworldly alarm began to echo through the Nexus. The walls of the chamber pulsed with angry red light, and in the distance, they could hear the sound of approaching Void Shaper reinforcements. "Defensive positions." Shen barked, her tactical mind already formulating a plan. "We need to hold this room until those disruptors go off. Nara, can you maintain that quantum field?" Nara nodded, though she could feel the strain of the earlier effort taking its toll. "I can try, but I don't know for how long." "Do what you can," Chen said, placing a reassuring hand on Nara's shoulder. "We'll handle the rest." The next 2 minutes felt like an eternity. Wave after wave of Void Shaper constructs poured into the chamber, each more nightmarish than the last. The human and Zephyrian team fought with everything they had, their earlier victory giving them a renewed sense of hope and determination. Marcus coordinated their defense with uncanny precision, his tactical genius shining through as he anticipated and countered each of the Void Shaper's strategies. Chen was a whirlwind of motion, her enhanced reflexes allowing her to dance between reality distortions as she cut down enemy after enemy. Nera stood at the center of it all, maintaining the quantum field that gave her allies a fighting chance. She could feel her strength ebbing, but the memory of the earlier psychic link spurred her on. These humans, whom she had once dismissed as primitive, were fighting with everything they had to save her world. She would not let them down. Just when it seemed they could hold out no longer, Dr. Seto's voice crackled over their comms. Disruptors at full charge. Brace for detonation. Everyone down. Chen shouted, diving for cover. The world exploded in a cacophony of light and sound. Nara felt as if her very atoms were being torn apart and reassembled. For a terrifying moment, she thought they had miscalculated, that the disruptors had destroyed them along with the Nexus. Then, slowly, reality began to stabilize. The impossible geometries of the Void Shaper structure started to unravel, collapsing in on themselves. Through the disintegrating walls of the chamber, Nara could see the lunar surface returning to its natural state. "It's working," she breathed, hardly daring to believe it. "The reality manipulation field is collapsing." Chen staggered to her feet, her armor scorched and dented, but a fierce grin on her face. "Karn, do you read me? What's the situation on Zephyria?" After a moment of tense static, Karn's voice came through, filled with a joy Nara had never heard from the gruff resistance leader. It's incredible. The Void Shapers are in disarray. Their ships are falling from the sky. Their ground forces are dissolving into nothing. We're pushing them back on all fronts." A cheer went up from the team, the full impact of their victory finally hitting home. They had done it. They had saved Zephyria, and quite possibly the entire galaxy. As the lunar nexus continued to collapse around them, Chen turned to her team. "All right, people, let's not celebrate just yet. We still need to get out of here in one piece. Back to the shuttle. Double time." Their escape from the disintegrating nexus was a blur of collapsing corridors and shifting gravity. More than once, they nearly lost team members to suddenly appearing chasms or walls of twisted spacetime. But through it all, they persevered, the humans' adaptability and the Zephyrians' psionic abilities working in perfect harmony. As they finally reached the shuttle and took off from the lunar surface, Nara looked back at the remains of the Nexus. Where once there had been a monument to chaos and unreality, there was now only a crater on the moon's surface, slowly being reclaimed by the natural order of things. The journey back to Zephyria was tense, none of them quite believing that it was truly over until they broke through the planet's atmosphere. Gone was the sickly green haze that had shrouded the world. The skies were clear, and even from orbit, Nara could see signs of her planet beginning to heal itself. As they landed in what remained of Lumina, they were greeted by cheering crowds of Zephyrians and human reinforcements who had arrived to help with the cleanup. Karn pushed his way through the throng, his usual stoic demeanor cracked by a wide smile. "You did it," he said, clasping Chen's arm in a warrior's grip. "When we lost contact after the disruptors went off, we feared the worst. But you actually did it. You saved us all." Chen shook her head, gesturing to the mixed team of humans and Zephyrians disembarking from the shuttle. "We did it," she corrected. "All of us together." As the initial euphoria of victory began to fade, the enormity of the task ahead became clear. Zephyria had been deeply scared by the Void Shaper's occupation. The process of rebuilding would be long and difficult. But as Nara looked around at the humans and Zephyrians working side by side to clear debris and treat the wounded, she felt a surge of hope. If they could come together to face an impossible threat, surely they could forge a new future together. Elder Zora approached, leaning heavily on a makeshift cane but with a fierce pride shining in her eyes. "You have done well, young one," she said to Nara. "You have learned what I had hoped you would. That strength comes in many forms, and that diversity can be our greatest asset in the face of adversity. Nera nodded, feeling a profound shift in her worldview. I was wrong about humans, she admitted. I thought their lack of psionic abilities made them weak, but I've never seen such adaptability, such resilience. Zora smiled knowingly. And perhaps they have learned something about us as well. The galaxy is vast and full of wonders, Nera. This is but the beginning of a new chapter for both our peoples. As the sun began to set on the first day of Zephyria's freedom, Nera found herself standing with Chen, looking out over the recovering city. The human captain looked exhausted but satisfied, her eyes reflecting the golden light of the twin moons rising on the horizon. So, Chen said, breaking the comfortable silence, what happens now? Nera considered the question, her mind racing with possibilities. Now, she said slowly, we rebuild. We learn from each other. And we prepare. Chen raised an eyebrow. Prepare? For what? Nera turned to face her, her expression serious. The Void Shapers were a threat unlike any we'd faced before, but they're not the only danger out there in the vastness of space. We've proven that together, we're stronger than we ever could be apart. I think it's time we made that partnership official, don't you? A slow smile spread across Chen's face as she understood the implications of Nera's words. Are you proposing an alliance, Ambassador Nera? Nera felt a thrill at the title, realizing that her journey had led her to this moment. I believe I am, Captain Chen. After all, we have a galaxy to protect. As they shook hands, sealing the beginnings of a new interstellar alliance, Nera couldn't help but marvel at the twists of fate that had brought them to this point. She had begun this journey filled with hatred and suspicion towards humans. Now she counted them among her closest allies and friends. The road ahead would not be easy. There were wounds to heal, trust to build, and untold challenges waiting for them among the stars. But as Nera looked at the determination in Chen's eyes, mirrored in the faces of humans and Zephyrians working together all around them, she knew one thing for certain. Whatever the universe had in store for them, they would face it together, and they would prevail. A new understanding. In the months that followed the defeat of the Void Shapers, Zephyria underwent a remarkable transformation. The scars left by the invasion ran deep, but the combined efforts of Zephyrians and humans were slowly but surely healing the wounded planet. Nera stood on the balcony of the newly reconstructed High Council chambers, looking out over the city of Lumina. The crystalline spires were beginning to regrow, their surfaces once again shimmering with the bioluminescent energy that was the hallmark of Zephyrian architecture. But now, interspersed among the alien structures, were unmistakably human designs. Practical, sturdy, and somehow beautiful in their own right. Quite a view, isn't it? Captain Chen's voice came from behind her. Nera turned to see the human officer approach, dressed in the formal uniform of the Earth Alliance. Hard to believe how far we've come in such a short time. Nera nodded, a smile playing at the corners of her mouth. Indeed, though I suspect your definition of short time differs somewhat from mine. Chen chuckled, coming to stand beside her at the railing. Fair point. I forget sometimes that you Zephyrians measure time on a different scale than we do. But you have to admit, we humans do know how to get things done quickly when we need to. That you do, Nera agreed, her tone warm with affection. Over the past months, she had come to appreciate the humans' drive and determination in ways she never could have imagined before the invasion. Your people's ability to adapt and innovate continues to amaze me. They stood in comfortable silence for a moment, watching as a mixed team of human and Zephyrian workers maneuvered a large crystal into place on a nearby building. The seamless cooperation between the two species was a testament to how far they had come. The High Council is assembling, Nera said finally, her voice taking on a more formal tone. Are you ready for this, Captain? Chen took a deep breath, squaring her shoulders. As ready as I'll ever be. This is a big step for both our peoples. I just hope I don't mess it up. Nera placed a reassuring hand on Chen's shoulder, her tentacles gently curling around the human's arm. You won't. You've earned their respect, Arya. Mine most of all. The use of her first name wasn't lost on Chen. She nodded, a determined glint in her eye. Well then, Ambassador Nera, shall we go make some history? Together, they walked into the council chambers. The room was a perfect blend of Zephyrian and human design. Soaring crystal arches framed a circular table of polished earth oak. Around the table sat the leaders of both worlds. The Zephyrian High Council, resplendent in their ceremonial robes, and a delegation from the Earth Alliance, their crisp uniforms a stark contrast. At the head of the table sat Elder Zora, her aged form seeming to glow with an inner light. Besides her was Admiral Reyes, her stern features softened by the hint of a smile. As Nara and Chen took their seats, a hush fell over the assembly. Elder Zora's voice, still strong despite her advanced years, rang out clear and true. Esteemed colleagues, honored guests, we are gathered here today to formalize an alliance born in the crucible of our darkest hour. The Void Shapers sought to unmake reality itself, to reshape our worlds in their image. But in doing so, they inadvertently forged a bond between our peoples stronger than any we could have imagined. Admiral Reyes nodded, taking up the thread. Humanity has long looked to the stars, wondering if we were alone in the universe. We sought allies, friends among the cosmic tapestry. Little did we know that we would find not just allies, but kindred spirits in our hour of need. Nera listened as the two leaders spoke, marveling at how far they had all come. She remembered her own prejudices, the distrust and even hatred she had harbored towards humans. Now, looking around the table at the faces of those who had fought alongside her, she felt only warmth and camaraderie. The formal proceedings continued, with both sides presenting the terms of the new Zephyrian Earth Alliance. Trade agreements were discussed, cultural exchange programs proposed, and joint scientific ventures planned. But underlying it all was a sense of shared purpose, a recognition that they were stronger together than they ever could be apart. As the final documents were signed and the alliance officially ratified, the cheer went up from both Zephyrians and humans alike. Nara felt a swell of emotion, her heart beating in unison with the jubilant atmosphere in the room. Later, as the formal ceremonies gave way to a more relaxed celebration, Nara found herself in a quiet corner with Chen, Dr. Sato, and Marcus. The human scientist was animatedly discussing her latest findings on the integration of Zephyrian psionic technology with Earth's quantum computing systems. The possibilities are absolutely staggering. Sato gushed, her eyes alight with excitement. We're on the cusp of a technological revolution that could redefine our understanding of the universe itself. Marcus, ever the pragmatist, raised an eyebrow. And you're sure this won't accidentally create another reality-warping crisis? Because I've had about enough of those for one lifetime. His dry comment elicited laughter from the group, the shared memory of their harrowing experiences only serving to strengthen the bond between them. As the laughter subsided, Chen raised her glass in a toast. To new beginnings, she said, her voice carrying a weight of emotion rarely displayed by the usually stoic captain. And to friends who become family. They clinked their glasses together, the crystalline sound ringing out like a promise for the future. As Nara sipped the sweet Zephyrian nectar, she felt a profound sense of gratitude wash over her. I owe you all an apology, she said softly, drawing curious looks from her human friends. Before all of this, I held such negative views of humans. I thought you were primitive, violent, unworthy of trust. I couldn't have been more wrong. Chen placed a comforting hand on Nara's arm. Hey, we didn't exactly have the best first impression of each other's species. What matters is that we moved past it. We learned from each other, grew together. Dr. Sato nodded enthusiastically. Exactly. That's the beauty of science, of exploration. We challenge our preconceptions, adapt our worldviews based on new evidence. It's what makes us stronger. Marcus, in a rare display of open emotion, raised his glass again. To challenging preconceptions, then, and to Nara, without whom none of us would be here today. As they toasted again, Nera felt a warmth that had nothing to do with the nectar. She looked at these humans, no, these friends, and marveled at the journey that had brought them together. The celebration continued long into the night, with Zephyrians and humans mingling freely, sharing stories, and forging new bonds. Nera found herself moving from group to group, her role as ambassador feeling more natural with each passing moment. She spoke with young Zephyrian scientists eager to learn about Earth's approach to technology, and with human diplomats fascinated by the intricacies of Zephyrian culture. Everywhere she looked, she saw the seeds of understanding and cooperation taking root. As the twin moons of Zephyria rose high in the sky, casting their ethereal light over the celebrating city, Nera found herself once again on the balcony. The cool night air was soothing against her scales, carrying with it the mingled scents of her homeworld and the subtle, alien fragrances brought by the human visitors. She sensed Chen's approach before she heard her, the human's presence now a familiar comfort in her mind. "Credit for your thoughts?" Chen asked, coming to stand beside her. Nera smiled at the human idiom. "I was just thinking about how much has changed. Not just our worlds, but us. Me." Chen nodded, her gaze sweeping over the city below. Chen nodded, her gaze sweeping over the city below. "Change is never easy," she said thoughtfully, "but sometimes it's necessary. We all had to evolve to face this threat, and I'd say we came out stronger for it." Nera hummed in agreement, her tentacles swaying gently in the night breeze. "I used to think that strength came from uniformity, from a single, unified mind. But now I see that true strength lies in diversity, in the blending of different perspectives and abilities." "Couldn't have said it better myself," Chen replied with a smile. "You know, back on Earth, there's an old saying, 'The whole is greater than the sum of its parts.' I think that applies pretty well to our alliance, don't you?" Before Nera could respond, a flash of light in the sky caught their attention. For a moment, both tensed, memories of the invasion still fresh. But as they watched, more lights appeared, streaks of brilliance racing across the star-filled expanse. "A meteor shower," Nera breathed, her voice filled with wonder. "We haven't had one since before the invasion." Chen's eyes widened in appreciation of the celestial display. "It's beautiful," she murmured. As they stood there, watching the cosmic dance unfold above them, Nera felt a profound sense of peace settle over her. The universe, in all its vast complexity, had brought their two species together. Despite all odds, despite prejudice and fear, and the very fabric of reality being twisted against them, they had prevailed. "Area," Nera said softly, using the human's first name with a newfound comfort. "What do you think the future holds for us? For our peoples?" Chen was quiet for a long moment, her eyes still fixed on the meteor shower above. When she finally spoke, her voice was filled with a quiet determination. I think we've only just begun to scratch the surface of what we can achieve together. The Void Shapers were a terrible threat, but they also showed us something important, that the universe is far stranger and more wonderful than we ever imagined." She turned to face Nera, her expression serious but hopeful. "There are more wonders out there, Nera. More challenges too, I'm sure. But whatever comes, we'll face it together. Human ingenuity, Zephyrian wisdom, and who knows what other allies we might find along the way." Nera nodded, feeling the thrill of excitement at the possibilities Chen's words evoked. "A grand adventure among the stars," she mused. "Our peoples united not just in defense, but in exploration and discovery." "Exactly," Chen agreed, her smile widening. "And I can't think of anyone I'd rather have by my side for that adventure than you, Ambassador." The use of her title brought a warm glow to Nera's hearts. She had come so far from the angry, distrustful Zephyrian she had once been. Now she stood as a bridge between two worlds, a symbol of what could be achieved when different species came together in mutual respect and understanding. As the night wore on and the celebration inside began to wind down, more people joined Nera and Chen on the balcony. Dr. Sato, her eyes shining with barely contained excitement, began pointing out constellations to a group of young Zephyrians, explaining the myths and legends humans had woven around the stars. Marcus, usually so reserved, was deep in conversation with Karn, the two warriors finding common ground in their shared experiences of the war and their hopes for a peaceful future. Elder Zora approached Nera, her aged eyes twinkling with a mixture of pride and mischief. "Well, young one," she said, her mental voice warm with affection, "it seems you found your true calling at last." Nera ducked her head in a gesture of respect. "I had a wise teacher," she replied, "one who showed me that true wisdom lies in being open to new ideas, new ways of thinking." Zora chuckled, the sound like chimes in the wind. "Perhaps, but the student has surpassed the teacher, I think. You and your human friends have opened up a new chapter not just for Zephyria, but for the entire galaxy." As the first light of dawn began to paint the sky in hues of lavender and gold, the gathered group fell into a comfortable silence. Humans and Zephyrians stood side by side, watching as their shared sun rose over a world forever changed. Nera felt Chen's hand slip into hers, the warmth of the human skin a pleasant contrast to her own cool scales. In that moment, surrounded by friends both old and new, Nera knew with absolute certainty that they were standing on the threshold of something truly extraordinary. The Void Shapers had sought to unmake reality, to impose their twisted vision of order on the cosmos. But in doing so, they had inadvertently sparked a union that would reshape the galaxy in a far more profound way, through understanding, cooperation, and the unbreakable bonds of friendship forged in adversity. As the new day dawned, bright with promise, Nera squeezed Shen's hand gently. Together, they faced the rising sun, ready to write the next chapter in their shared story, a tale of two species, once divided by fear and misunderstanding, now united in their quest to explore the wonders of the universe. The adventure, Nera realized with a thrill of excitement, was only just beginning.